Subic Bay, Philippines, once a bustling U.S. Navy stronghold during the Cold War, is roaring back to life. But this time, the skies are shaking with the thunder of US F16 fighter jets. Dozens of them, freshly arrived, and China is watching closely. These aren't just any planes. We're talking about some of America's most versatile combat aircraft, fast, lethal, and battle-tested. Their sudden presence here sends a message, one that echoes across the South China Sea. It began quietly. Local residents noticed unusual activity near the Subic Bay International Airport. Convoys of military vehicles, security tightened. Then, the deafening roar of jet engines split the air. One by one, F-16 Fighting Falcons touched down on the tarmac. The exact number? Sources say dozens, with more possibly en route. The U.S. Air Force isn't revealing full details, a move that only fuels speculation. Each of these jets is capable of speeds over Mach 2, armed with precision-guided bombs, air-to-air missiles, and advanced electronic warfare systems. They're here not for a parade, but for something far more serious. Subic Bay isn't just any port. It's strategically located just 200 kilometers from the contested waters of the South China Sea, a hotspot where Beijing has been building military outposts on artificial islands. From here, U.S. forces can monitor Chinese naval movements, support allied operations, and, if needed, respond in minutes to any escalation. And this timing, it's no coincidence.
It's not China's maritime empire.
In recent months, tensions between the Philippines and China have spiked. Repeated maritime clashes near the Second Thomas Shoal, Chinese Coast Guard ships ramming Philippine supply boats, and dangerous water cannon incidents have pushed Manila closer to Washington. Now, the arrival of these F-16s is a signal, not just to reassure the Philippines, but to remind Beijing that the U.S.-Philippines alliance is alive and armed. China's state media is already reacting, editorials warning against provocations, and military analysts calling the deployment destabilizing. Beijing could respond by increasing air patrols over the South China Sea, deploying more missile systems to its island bases, or ramping up naval exercises. But here's the question: will China escalate further, or quietly recalibrate its approach? This isn't just about a dozen jets. It's about a shifting power balance in Asia. The U.S. is deepening defense ties not only with the Philippines, but also with Japan, Australia, and even Vietnam. Every move, every deployment, every joint drill is part of a broader chess game for control over the world's most critical maritime corridor. And Subic Bay, it's back in the game. The roar of the S-16 is more than just the sound of engines. It's the sound of a warning, and the world is listening. The Philippines Minister of National Defense has cast a veil of uncertainty over the $5.6 billion procurement arrangement for American-made F-16 combat aircraft, a deal initially sanctioned in April. His remarks intimate that Manila remains in a state of deliberation over whether to advance with the acquisition. While conversing on the fringes of the Shangri-La Dialogue, an eminent security conclave convened in Singapore, Gilberto Teodoro disclosed that no formalized procurement proposition for the fourth-generation warplanes has yet been conveyed to the Philippine government. Even were such an overture presented, he remarked, the department remains undecided as to whether these fighter jets align with the archipelago's strategic imperatives. As matters stand, there is nothing presently laid before me warranting contemplation, he remarked during an interview. This statement follows the April authorization by the U.S. State Department for a prospective transfer of 20 F-16 fighter aircraft to the Philippines, an expansive package encompassing missiles, precision-guided munitions, and an assortment of ordnance. The aggregate valuation of the arrangement hovered just below $5.6 billion, a figure that would consume a formidable portion of the nation's defense coffers. In March, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth traveled to the Philippines as Washington sought to fortify its defense pact with Manila in a bid to counterbalance China's expanding influence. The two defense chiefs convened again over the weekend in Singapore, where Hegseth cautioned that the military peril emanating from Beijing could be imminent and implored allied nations to amplify their defense expenditures. For certain Philippine officials, the proposed fighter jet acquisition symbolized a robust long-term American commitment and a vote of confidence in their armed forces' capacity to operate such sophisticated machinery. Yet, almost immediately following the announcement, other voices within the government began to question the financial feasibility of such an immense outlay absent substantial U.S. financial support. Last year, the United States extended $500 million in long-term security assistance to the Philippines. However, sustaining such aid would require fresh appropriations from Congress. Under the Biden administration, Washington and Manila forged a strategic roadmap outlining a series of armament acquisitions to be pursued over the coming years as part of the Philippines' military modernization. This blueprint primarily emphasizes systems designed for maritime surveillance and the safeguarding of the archipelago's extensive coastlines, rather than the procurement of elite, high-performance fighter aircraft. At the Singapore Forum, Teodoro engaged in a pointed exchange with Chinese delegates who posed critical inquiries regarding the Philippines' defense alignment with the United States. Chinese Coast Guard vessels have made a habit of shadowing and obstructing Philippine ships in the South China Sea, waters Beijing claims in defiance of a 2016 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea Tribunal ruling that invalidated its expansive claims. China must undertake substantial trust building before it can be regarded as a credible negotiating counterpart, Teodoro asserted from the stage. We must, quite frankly, call a spade a spade.